Welcome to the blind zone. What is the blind zone? It's something that you never saw coming or something that you refuse to see that was right in front of your face. Today's blind zone, we're going to be talking about trust. And this comes kind of from an innocuous way. My son and I were talking, and my son's a very good cook. So he said, Mom, I have a really good recipe for you for the beef you bought and the vegetables. And I said, okay, great, let's hear it. Then he said, You take out your crock pot. And I thought, oh, here's problem one. Now I trusted my son, I trust his recipe. But 40 years ago, I had a very bad experience with the crock pot. I got the worst case of food poisoning. So ever since that appliance has been very suspect. So I trusted my son, but not the crock pot. So it also led me to think about other things that I've trusted. And during my reading, I'm in Exodus. And I was thinking about, and this is where I really have to say I learned a lot about meditation this past week because I'd been meditating on the scripture about why the people, after they've just seen the miraculous ways that God had provided, they get through the Red Sea. Miriam and her ladies break out in the Happy Thanksgiving dance, and they're doing all that. And then shortly thereafter, they're grumbling and complaining. And I thought, what brought that on? Because clearly God was with them. And I can prove that. He was with them in three ways. Because back in Genesis, God had told Abraham that his people, the nation of Israel, were going to be enslaved for 400 years. And generations went on. They estimate that there's 4 generations for every century. So a lot of time had elapsed. But during that time, the people still had a sense of God. And the three ways that I can prove that is God said when he was talking to Moses, because I have heard my people's cry. So they were still praying to him. And then he told Moses, in another thing, when you go to talk to Pharaoh, I want you to gather the elders first and tell them my plan. So there was still a God structure involved in their lives. And then the third thing he said, Moses took with him the bones of Joseph. Now, in the last 5 years, I've moved 3 different times. And I can honestly tell you, there have been things lost along the way. But the fact that they kept up with Joseph's bones for over 400 years still tell me that they were deeply connected to the, the roots of God. The other thing I was thinking about is 400 years is a long time. I don't know of any other people group. Like think back to our 400-year history. We have no idea what was going on then. But God was faithful enough during those 400 years, they still felt connected. So I thought about that and I meditated on it and I pondered on it and I prayed about it. And I asked, what would make people who would cry out to God to save them? And when he does, they don't trust him. And I was thinking about it back in the day, before the pandemic, and you made a hotel reservation. And when you got there, if it was a reputable hotel, they either had the air on or the heat on, depending on the season. Maybe somebody came in and turned a light on so you didn't go into a dark room. And there was water and snacks if you were at a higher level place. But anyway, somebody had prepared for your visit. And I thought about that and how God had plenty of time to plan. And it's not like he just thought this up and then went, oh, I bet they're going to be hungry when they get out there. And what I think I realized was that they didn't trust God enough to know that all they had to do was ask for what they needed. Now, this is where it must look like I'm going to start making Bible salad, where I pick something from here and something from there. But in the New Testament, it says, you have not because you ask not. And there's other scriptures that say, now, if a child asks a father for bread, will he give him a stone? Or if he asks for egg, will he give him a scorpion? So in those instances, all the child needed to do was ask of the father. And I thought about this with relationship to that event. So they're in the wilderness, they get through the Red Sea. How different their lives would have been if they would have trusted in God and asked them for what they needed. Because when you complain about somebody, you're complaining by telling them in some no uncertain terms that I don't believe you. I don't think you can do what you said you're going to do. And now all I have as ammunition is a complaint. And so, and it's like that if we demand things too. What you're saying is, I think what I need is better than what you think I need. But what if they would have said, what if after the Marian and the ladies' happy dance, they would have said, God, I am so tired. Thank you for rescuing us, but man, I'm tired. I really would like some water and some food to eat and just a place to put my head and just rest up a bit. And God would have provided that because he was going to provide that anyway. But how he had to provide it was he had to provide it from the advantage of, I'm going to give you what I know you need, not that you haven't asked for it through a complaint. So I thought about that, and I think of during that time, a couple days later, I was restlessly trying to read some books. And I just kept skipping through them on my Kindle. No, 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 no. And I was really nudged to read the Tony Evans book called Kingdom Living. And I was on the chapter of prayer. And in that prayer, I started to really apply this. What if instead of my prayers sound like, and I don't think my prayers sound like I'm complaining because I'm not a complainer, but you'll have to check with my friends and they'll say yay or nay, but who knows. But I started to say, well, what if I asked for things, but not just ask for things like, I'd like a new refrigerator, I'd like a Lamborghini, but what if I asked for things under the pretense of the scripture that I've been using as my foundation, as my stabilizer, that I will delight myself in the Lord and he will give me the desires of my heart. So what if I started to ask him to draw me closer to himself? What if I started to ask the Spirit to put people in my path that I could be helpful to? What if I asked the Lord for things that would further his kingdom? And I think my life would radically change. And not that I don't do those things, but I think I used to do them under a different umbrella of prayer that I fully didn't understand. And this is just on an aside. In Exodus, I was reading through those plagues and I was wondering about those gnats. And I then spilt a bunch of Miralax on the floor on the counter. And I thought, oh, this is what those gnats are like. This is miserable to clean up. Sorry, that was just an aside that I had to share. So getting back to the asking part. So if the Israelites would have asked with earnest hearts what they really needed instead of grumbling and complaining, things would have gone radically different. But again, the Bible's a Bible and it is what it is. And it takes a really long time before they finally get all the things they think they need out of the way. And then they finally give in to the Lordship of God and surrender to what he wants for them. So in thinking about the trust issue, it's easy for me to say they should have trusted more. They should have asked instead of demanded. They should have been humbled instead of pompous. But we all fall into those human traits and categories. So for me, the lesson is that if I want something, I can certainly come to God and ask. And if I ask amiss, he just won't answer that prayer. But if I draw closer to him and know what it is he really wants for me, then most of the prayers when I ask him will be things that he will grant because those are things he wants for me as well. So that was just my short segment on what it is to be, to trust in simple things like somebody giving you a recipe or in the big things of what it is you should be doing and that you can trust God and surrender to what he has for you to do. And the next time we're together, I'm going to bring back a popular favorite. It's going to be my good friend Deirdre. And this time we're going to be talking about discipleship and disciple making, and how that's different from evangelism, which it, it's really hard to describe, but she's going to do a great job with that because that's her bailiwick. Anyway, thank you again for joining me on the Blind Zone as we discuss trust. Thank you.